That's a pretty long time, but still, like, yeah, I believe in God, so he has his plans, but I had my plans.
You know what? Whenever we started swinging and banging and he threw some punches, and I was like, man, that was really, like, predictable. That was really easy to see. Like, that came from a mile away. Like, I'm a way better boxer than you. Let's fight.
Tension between fighters is nothing new in MMA, but when it involves two personalities like Shawn Strickland and Khamzat Chimaev, the situation carries a different kind of weight. Both fighters have built reputations not just on performance, but on how they present themselves outside the cage. Strickland is known for direct, unfiltered communication. His approach often blurs the line between promotion and personal expression, making his interactions unpredictable. Chimaev, on the other hand, has developed a reputation based on dominance and intensity. His rise through the ranks was defined by aggressive performances and a mindset focused on control and pressure. So when the two were seen in a tense interaction, it immediately drew attention. From a factual standpoint, the moment itself was brief, but the reaction around it was not. Clips circulated quickly, discussions followed, and speculation began to build around what the exchange actually meant. Was it just another promotional moment, or was there a genuine level of tension behind it? From an analytical perspective, these situations often exist somewhere in between. In modern MMA, fighter interactions outside the cage play a significant role in shaping narratives. They influence fan perception, build anticipation, and sometimes set the stage for future matchups. But not every confrontation leads to a fight, and not every exchange is purely for promotion. In this case, the combination of personalities, timing, and context made the moment stand out more than usual. To understand why this interaction gained so much attention, it's important to look at the individuals involved, starting with Shawn Strickland and the approach that has defined his career both inside and outside the cage. To understand the tension in that moment, it starts with Shawn Strickland and the approach that defines him. Inside the cage, Strickland's style is built on pressure, consistency, and control. He operates behind a high-volume jab, maintains a steady pace, and focuses on limiting his opponent's options rather than taking unnecessary risks. Statistically, his striking output and defensive awareness are key strengths. He doesn't rely on single explosive moments. Instead, he builds rounds through accumulation. Over time, that approach can wear opponents down, both physically and mentally. But outside the cage, the dynamic shifts. Strickland's public persona is direct, often confrontational, and largely unfiltered. His interviews and interactions regularly generate attention, not because they follow a promotional script, but because they don't. From an analytical standpoint, this creates a unique position. On one hand, it increases visibility. Fighters who consistently draw attention tend to remain relevant, regardless of immediate results. On the other hand, it introduces unpredictability, because when communication is unfiltered, the line between promotion and genuine opinion becomes less clear. This is where his interactions with other fighters become significant. Moments that might otherwise be minor exchanges can escalate quickly, not necessarily because of the situation itself, but because of how he approaches it. In the case of his interaction with Khamzat Chimaev, this context matters. Strickland isn't known for holding back or managing his responses for optics. If there is tension, he tends to address it directly, and that approach increases the likelihood that any confrontation involving him will feel more real, regardless of whether it was intended to be promotional or not. On the other side of the interaction is Khamzat Chimaev, a fighter whose rise in the UFC has been defined by dominance and efficiency. From his debut, Chimaev established a clear pattern: fast starts, immediate pressure, and a focus on ending fights before opponents could adjust. In his early appearances, he secured multiple victories in a short time frame, often taking minimal damage while controlling every phase of the fight. This created a strong initial perception, not just as a contender, but as a potential title threat across divisions. From a stylistic standpoint, his approach is built around grappling control combined with aggressive forward movement. He closes distance quickly, forces exchanges, and once he establishes control, he rarely gives it up. This ability to dictate where the fight takes place has been one of his most consistent advantages. Statistically, his control time and finishing rates stand out. But beyond the numbers, it's the intensity of his performances that shapes his reputation. Unlike fighters who build momentum gradually, Chimaev's presence is immediate. His fights often feel one-sided from the opening moments, which reinforces reinforces the perception of dominance. Outside the cage, his persona aligns with that same intensity. His communication style is direct, often confident to the point of confrontation. While not as unpredictable as Shawn Strickland, his responses still carry a level of assertiveness that can escalate situations quickly. From an analytical perspective, this creates a natural point of tension. When two fighters with strong, uncompromising approaches interact even briefly, the potential for conflict increases. And in this case, that potential became visible in a moment that, while short, carried broader implications. The interaction between Shawn Strickland and Khamzat Chimaev didn't unfold over a long exchange. In fact, by most standards, it was relatively brief, but in the context of modern MMA, moments like this don't need time to have impact. They need the right combination of personalities, timing, and visibility, all of which were present here. Based on the available footage, the exchange appeared to begin as a verbal interaction. Both fighters were in close proximity, and the tone shifted quickly from neutral to tense. There was no extended buildup, no formal setting, just a direct face-to-face moment where neither side appeared particularly interested in stepping back. From an analytical standpoint, this is where interpretation becomes important, because without full context, including what was said before or after, the visible portion only tells part of the story. However, body language and positioning still provide useful indicators. Both fighters maintained eye contact, neither showed hesitation in holding their ground, and while the situation didn't escalate into physical contact, the intensity of the moment was clear. In many cases, interactions like this are controlled, structured in a way that supports promotion without creating real risk. This didn't fully follow that pattern. There was a level of unpredictability in how quickly the tone shifted, which made the moment feel less scripted and more reactive. That distinction is part of why the clip gained traction, because when audiences sense that something isn't entirely staged, engagement tends to increase. And in this case, the combination of personalities and the nature of the exchange made it stand out beyond a typical promotional interaction. Once the clip of the interaction between Shawn Strickland and Khamzat Chimaev began circulating, the reaction followed a familiar pattern: rapid, divided, and highly engaged. Within hours, the moment was being shared across multiple platforms. From an audience perspective, the appeal was clear. Two well-known fighters, both with strong personalities, involved in a tense exchange that felt unscripted. That combination naturally drives attention. But beyond visibility, the interpretation of the moment varied. Some viewers saw it as a genuine confrontation, a reflection of real tension between two competitors with fundamentally different approaches. Others viewed it as part of the broader promotional environment of MMA, where even brief interactions can be amplified to build narratives around potential matchups. From an analytical standpoint, both interpretations are valid. In today's fight landscape, the line between authentic conflict and strategic promotion is often unclear. Fighters are aware of the value of visibility, but that doesn't necessarily mean every interaction is planned. Within the fighter community, reactions were also mixed. Some supported the idea of a potential matchup, pointing out the stylistic contrast between Strickland's controlled striking and Chimaev's aggressive grappling. Others focused less on the confrontation itself and more on the competitive implications, questioning how such a fight would play out given their respective strengths. Media coverage followed a similar approach. Rather than treating the moment as an isolated incident, it was framed within the context of possible future scenarios, and that shift from reaction to speculation is what extended the life of the story, because once a moment creates enough attention, the focus quickly moves from what happened to what could happen next. Beyond the moment itself, the interaction between Shawn Strickland and Khamzat Chimaev naturally leads to a more technical question. How would this matchup actually play out? From a stylistic standpoint, it presents a clear contrast. Strickland operates at a controlled pace. His game is built around distance management, consistent output, and defensive awareness. He uses his jab to dictate range, limits unnecessary exchanges, and focuses on winning rounds rather than chasing finishes. Chimaev, by comparison, applies immediate pressure. He looks to close distance quickly, initiate grappling exchanges, and establish control early. His approach is less about gradual accumulation and more about decisive moments, forcing opponents into positions where they have limited options. This creates a classic dynamic: control versus disruption. From an analytical perspective, the outcome would likely depend on where the fight takes place. If Strickland is able to maintain distance and keep the fight standing, his volume and composure could allow him to manage rounds effectively. His ability to stay disciplined under pressure would be a key factor. However, if Chimaev is able to close that distance and initiate grappling exchanges, the dynamic changes significantly. His control in those positions has been one of his strongest advantages, particularly in the early stages of fights. Timing would also play a role. Strickland's effectiveness tends to increase over longer durations, while Chimaev has historically been most dangerous in the opening phases. So from a purely competitive standpoint, this isn't just a personality clash, it's a matchup defined by contrasting systems, each with a clear path to success, and that's what makes the speculation around it more than just surface level interest. In isolation, the interaction between Shawn Strickland and Khamzat Chimaev was brief. No physical altercation, no official announcement, no confirmed matchup. But within the structure of modern MMA, moments like this rarely stay isolated. From an analytical perspective, their impact comes from what they represent, not just what actually happened. Two fighters with established reputations, two contrasting styles, and a moment that introduces the possibility of direct competition. That combination is enough to create sustained attention. In today's fight landscape, narratives often begin outside the cage. A short exchange becomes a discussion point, a discussion becomes speculation, and speculation can eventually influence matchmaking decisions depending on timing, rankings, and promotional priorities. That doesn't guarantee a fight will happen, but it does create momentum. For Strickland, involvement in moments like this reinforces his position as a visible and active presence in the division, someone who remains part of ongoing conversations regardless of immediate scheduling. For Chimaev, it adds another layer to his trajectory. His rise has already been defined by performance, but interactions like this expand his relevance beyond results alone. From a broader perspective, this is how modern rivalries often begin, not with contracts or official announcements, but with moments that capture attention and create discussion. Whether this specific interaction leads to anything more remains uncertain, but the conditions are there, and in a sport where visibility and timing play a critical role, sometimes that's enough to turn a moment into something much bigger.